when it comes to either servers or counter workers or coffee shops, even at times the most obscure places. I feel now, due to the simple spinning around of a kiosk or an iPad that then says, do you want to tip? That I call guilt tipping. What do we say, fam? Welcome to Simplexity, a little podcast where we take seemingly complex matters and attempt to make them plain and simple. It's just a little podcast.
Just a little tiny
just a
one.
wee little guy.
That's right. With a big influence.
My name is Sammy Foster, joined with the one and only Boots is in the house.
Hello there. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. Good to be back in the saddle.
That's right.
And we took a little time off, although we kicked off season 5 with our dear friend now, Landon McDonald.
Yeah.
That was rich.
Yeah. What an interesting fellow.
Yes.
Very insightful.
Very. And very unassuming. Like it just pours out of him, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
If you judge a book by its cover, although I think he's very handsome. And
If you judge a book by his mustache.
might leave you a little confused. But Landon, if you're out there, a little shout out to you. Thanks for making our podcast that much richer.
Yeah.
But we got a good one today.
We do. It's funny how this episode title came into discussion. So, as you know, me, you, Becca met up to chat through what do we want to talk about in season number 5.
Yes.
Spoiler alert, a lot of Simplexiter suggested topics are coming up.
Yes, that's true.
But that's not one of them today.
No,
This
it is
one,
not.
this one, we were sitting at dinner chatting, and we're talking about different topics, and you go, "I want to talk about tipping," and Becca and I were like,
Yeah, we
what?
were, and the context for the meal that we were at was to discuss, some of the Simplexiters suggestions
Yeah.
for topics.
Yeah.
And be that we were at a meal getting ready to pay our bill. It then it was the catalyst within me that came to realize this has been an ongoing,
internal struggle.
yes, it has, of which I feel like the American consumer is a little bit on autopilot. Now, I know I'm very much broad brushing that because I know there's a lot of consumers that are very intentional and that watch their pennies, because if you watch your pennies, the dollars will watch themselves. Come on, somebody.
Didn't know I was at the table with Dave Ramsey.
No, that was from my grandmother. You've never heard that before?
Never.
Oh, watch your pennies, and the dollars will take care of themselves. Anyway, hey, I digress.
Okay.
So let's get away from that. But the topic of tipping came up, and I do believe that it is an ongoing frustration, at minimum conversation that is taking place. And I want to weigh into it, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, me too. And I will just say, based off of various Facebook posts that I've seen in relation to tipping,
Ooh.
it is a controversial matter.
Yes, it is.
People have strong opinions about this.
Very much so.
So
Watch this one be the one that gets us
yeah,
canceled.
you wouldn't expect it, but that's kind of how it
We
goes.
wade into all the...
It's like, yeah, I'm all down with all that other stuff they've talked about, but when they say tipping, that's where I draw the line.
So let me just set the stage for where this became really the angst within.
Yeah, set the stage for the listeners in a similar way that you set the stage for Becca and I when we were like, what?
Totally. So I am, just for baseline, to establish that I am a supporter of tipping. And I would argue, I'm not tooting my horn here, but I just want to say for the record, I am a generous tipper. So when it comes to going out to meals, or even when it comes to valets, or in certain hospitality contexts, in the case that I'm feeling like I got a couple extra dollars and I'm staying in a hotel and bags are brought to my room, I I am intentionally generous so as to be that guy.
So you carry cash for that reason?
Not as often as I like, because this is an ongoing conversation with Ruth and I that I always say I have regressed in my cash carrying intentionality.
I think most people probably have too.
I totally. It's very inconvenient. Nevertheless, when I'm traveling or I am going to dinner, what have you, I make it a point that I want to have cash on me. Why? Because I want to be a generous tipper. I just like being that guy.
Yeah.
Not trying to prove anything, just trying to extend a heart of gratitude, while at the same time, I feel like it is a good look.
Yeah.
And it makes the world a better place
I agree.
to get money. Okay. Now, that being the case, I say that to say I am not adverse to tipping. What I have come to grow increasingly frustrated with is guilt tipping. And I feel that due to developed technology and the impersonal nature now of the growing hospitality contacts when it comes to either servers or counter workers or coffee shops or even at times the most obscure places, I feel now, due to the simple spinning around of a kiosk or an iPad that then says, do you want to tip? That I call guilt tipping. And so it was recently that I was, in full disclosure, I was at my son's place of work.
Okay.
All right, Ash, this is a shout out. He's a hard worker. Nevertheless, I was in his place of business wherein I ordered my bagel and my coffee, and then an iPad was spun around on me.
Did he spin it around on you?
He did not. He did
'Cause
not.
that's a whole other
He
level.
That's
like,
right.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah, we would have had a little parenting conversation. But in this case, and I looked down at it, and mind you, I don't know why I had the aha moment or the increased frustration that day, because it had happened 100 times prior to that. But I felt like the autopilot sort of kicked out of gear, and I became aware of my internal feelings.
Yeah, you were aware of the Matrix.
Yes. And I looked down at the kiosk where it said, and it started at like 15%. It wasn't even 10%. It was like 15, 20, 25%
Yep.
to tip the person that did nothing with the bagel. Neither were they even going to fill my coffee cup. It was self-serve. So all I got was a styrofoam cup.
Yeah.
And I thought, what are we doing here? And so it's from that place that the conversation then ensued, that I feel that tipping in the United States of America, and I say that intentionally because in European countries or in other nationalities, there is no way they assume upon tipping the way that we do in the Western world. But tipping has grown increasingly out of control.
Yeah.
That I feel like a lot of people feel guilted into, where people spin it around and say, this thing's going to, as you said, ask you a question.
Yeah.
It's not asking a question. That's ignorant.
Yeah.
It's going to ask me to give money.
That's the part that bothers me about it is, when it comes to, I set aside tipping in like a server context, because that's right or wrong, that's become kind of the social contract of,
Amen.
listen, if you're going to a restaurant, you're going to tip people.
Right.
And let's start it at 20%.
Totally.
But we all know the bargain there. It's accepted. And
Absolutely.
It's you can choose whether to go to that restaurant or not. All that being said.
And well, hold on. Let's remember, it's accepted and expected because the wages for the server is calibrated with the expectation that most of their monies is going to come by way of tipping.
Yeah.
So like the average right now in the United States of America, the average server dollar an hour is 12. Actually, it just upticked to $12.40 an hour for a server.
Which is a lot more than I thought it would be.
Totally, because it used to be like $3 and 14 cents. So, but hey, cost of living, everything changing, inflation, the whole 9 yards. Totally get it. You can't live on $12 an hour. So, $12 an hour. So obviously, it's expected that hey, I'm going to make a lot more than that due to tipping. Wherein in many other service industries and roles, they are paid considerably more per hour, yet tips on top of it.
Yeah.
And so I think for all intents and purposes of this conversation, we leave those that are in the servers out.
Leave them out of here.
Yeah. You get a pass on this conversation. Hall pass given.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say that's part of the social construct that we've agreed upon.
Right.
When it comes to coffee shops, bagel shops, whatever.
Subway.
They do that at Subway?
Oh, yeah. Totally.
This wasn't part of the deal.
Yes.
And to what you said earlier, not only was it not part of the deal, but you're communicating it deceptively. And I know that's a strong way of phrasing it.
Right.
But that's how I see it. If you spin an iPad around and turn away and say, it's going to ask you a couple of questions.
Right. And and notice they're embarrassed as they should be.
Yeah. But I'm the guy, I don't know if I would do this, but I'm the guy who thinks of saying, what's it going to ask me?
You should.
Yeah. And
what kind of questions?
How's your day going? No, and it's actually, I'm so messed up that I was at Starbucks one time, and in the drive-thru, this guy, and I kind of like him. I run into him a few times, and he's got a very unique way of like taking your order.
Yes.
Sometimes it annoys me. That's how strange I am. But anyway, I digress. When I pulled up, he gives me my coffee, and then I pay, and he goes, hey, it's going to ask you if you want to leave a tip or not.
Huh.
And I did.
Right.
Because he was honest with me.
Because he was
and
forthright.
how messed, it's like, that's another layer of manipulation that I'm like, okay, well, he told me he wants to ask me for a tip, so now I have to tip him. It's
right.
like, it's spun out of control.
It is.
And we've got to delve into this matter.
Yes, we do.
Could you? I'm sorry. We're very passionate about this, as you can tell.
Do you think I'm overreaching by calling it guilt tipping?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No, not at all.
Appreciate that. Amen.
And I don't think anyone else listening, let us know.
Had you disagreed with me, I would have fought you right now.
To play devil's advocate here.
Yeah, right.
No, I think that, well, you even see this in the stats, and you might get to this, but digital tipping, I don't recall exactly what the stat is, but it's like you're considerably more likely to leave a digital tip.
Oh, absolutely.
Than you are, an in-cash tip. And I think that's
all my research.
Yeah. And I think that's because people feel compelled to, like they're going to be judged or they're going to be looked down upon. Like you're not just giving a tip, you're being guilted into it. And I think that most people would probably agree with that.
Totally. So here's what I think is a good foundation to establish. And that is, before we get into tipping as to how much one should and who qualifies to be tipped and guilt tipping and on and on and on, and all the little tributaries that jump off of this, I feel like we got to start from Jump Street. That meaning that we have to ask the question, where did tipping come from and why do we do it? Why has it sort of found its way into, societal fabric that we are sort of, spring-loaded to do it, expected to do it, and feel compelled to do it? See, I just navigate.
Boop, 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 boop.
Tipping originated back in the Victorian era with the aristocrats, the nobles, wherein even in that day, it was never assumed upon. But because of the frequency that the nobles, the aristocrats, high society would tip, it then bred the expectation, rightfully so and naturally, wherein if you would go into most certainly someone's estate, you would have dinner there. It was tuxedo hour. Let's everybody think Downton Abbey. That whole era. Beck, you're not even listening. Beck's completely
I am listening.
uninterested in that. I said Downton Abbey thinking that would
You just wanted a
frighten
facial.
you.
Oh.
Nevertheless,
To be fair, I looked over too because I was
Yes.
expecting her to go.
and just for all of our listeners, viewers to know, she was texting.
No.
Anyway, that's enough back. Anyway, moving right along, what would happen is that the nobles would then, in their way out, they would tip and give currency, cash, for exceptional service. Now, do know that those that would receive that tip, it was expected that they were the creme de la creme of hospitality. You waited for nothing, you asked for nothing. It was already known before you knew you needed something that it was provided for you. The butlers, the wait staff, the valets, that's how you say it, right?
Valets.
What? I think you pronounced the T. I could be wrong. Anyway, hey, I'm from Glen Burnie. Give me a pass. They would stand in the wings so as to meet your every need and make sure that you were comfortable and cared for. So you were already getting exceptional service. But those that would go above and beyond, of which I don't know how they would, but if it was noted that they did, they would then get a tip. So then what was equivalated was exceptional service deserves a tip above and beyond what you're paying.
Yeah.
Okay, that then found its way as time went on, bred into present day society, where now a server is paid a minimal wage under the social construct that tips will be given. But hey, serve well. Okay. At the same time, the gripe that I have is that not only are tips expected and guilted out of the consumer, but hospitality and service has dropped. So I don't mind. I'm making a lot of lamb-blast statements here, aren't I, Beck? But hear me. I'm not speaking about anybody's listening to this podcast because I know they're all exceptional servers.
That's right.
But we have to acknowledge that's for me at Subway, and I won't know which one, but for them to spin that iPad around and ask me for a tip when they didn't even smile at me, they barely spoke to me and actually made me feel like I was inconveniencing them as I was getting my cold cut trio, where I'm very minimal on the vegetables. I like lettuce, black onions, green peppers, and onions, and mayo, and hey, and salt. I'm just saying. If anybody's out there looking for a good lunch, I just helped you out. But they'll look at me almost with a mean mug and still spin the iPad around on me. We are a far way from where tipping originated and what was expected and the social sort of understanding that surrounded it. That's what irks me.
Yeah, and you're making a lot of bold claims, but at the same time, it's so common knowledge and common perspective, I guess, that you see memes about this where it's like the barista's face after spinning the iPad around, and it's just like all these different memes show. Like people get it.
Right.
We're not. I don't think we're not out on a limb here.
No.
Didn't the word tip originally stand for something like to? Becca, fact check this for us if you've got service.
Oh yeah, I was not aware.
Seems like you're always conveniently out of service when we're.
I have service. What I was looking up when I wasn't listening was what countries
let's see what
don't
tip
tip.
means.
What countries don't tip? Interesting.
Oh,
That's what I
But-
was looking up.
I thought it stood for something like to ensure promptness or something. I know ensure starts with
Wow.
E. You find anything? It was in one of those articles.
hey, I would have bought it.
Yeah, you're right. To ensure promptness.
To ensure promptness.
But that goes to what you were saying.
absolutely.
of this is the standard expectation.
Right.
And now if you get this tip either before or ahead of time, like you're going to bring it up to the next level. This is going to be extra prompt or
Absolutely.
extra over the top, above and beyond.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we have fallen away from that with our spinning iPads. To a
Yes, we
degree.
have. So just to add another competing factor too, not only are we being guilted to tip, secondly, service has declined. I don't know if I have had a conversation in recent years where I've heard anyone say, you know what's really happening in American society? That hospitality has gone next level.
It's booming.
People are more cheerful than ever. They're more sort of engaged than ever, wanting to help serve than ever. No. As work ethic decreases, service has decreased. And so that while at the same time, not only are we guilty to tip, but notice that the requested amount to tip is higher than ever. Mm-hmm. That's why this conversation right here is merited. It's that it's all trending in a poor direction.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, and I remember this because my father was adamant with me and my brothers and my sister, you tip well. Like my father, if we took him out to dinner, he would make us tell him after seeing the bill, and it was on us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he would make
that was part of the deal. You're going to take me out.
Yeah,
you better tip well.
That's 100%. And he would want to know, how much did you tip? So during the 1950s, people commonly tipped 10% of the bill. By the 1970s and 80s, that percentage had jumped to 15%. Now it's somewhere around 22%. So baseline, even for terrible service, I'll still give 20%.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation recently, and a person told me they won't tip if they get bad service. I can not. I have to tip at least 20.
Yeah.
But I would remember my father, like I would leave, he would tell me, you leave at minimum 15%. Actually, prior to his passing, it was never beneath 20%. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes when we would do it, my brothers and I, he would always go back to the table and drop an extra 5 or a 10 just to up it.
Yeah.
But what's happening now is that in 2023, people typically tip anywhere from 15 to 25%. Consumers on average tip 21%.
Huh.
So we're not doing bad. But actually,
that's average though.
That is average.
I'd be curious
that's the whole collective. But you want to know what's interesting is that there's a disparity between men and women.
Is there?
Oh my.
Do tell.
Do tell. Most people tip when it's expected. 95% of respondents said that they tip at least sometimes, with 76% saying that they tip always or often. I don't know what that's.
I like how I sometimes tip.
Right.
It's like
the majority of respondents say they tip an average of 11 to 20%. So I don't know how we got the average of 21%.
yeah, that doesn't.
But where's the part about men are about twice as likely as women to tip between 21 and 25%,
Care to comment, Becca?
while women are most likely to tip between 11 to 20%.
Ooh,
Ooh.
yikes.
Ladies, where's all the ladies? Okay. 1 in 3 people feel pressure to tip, while 18% feel uncomfortable about tipping. Well, join the club.
Yeah.
Nobody loves giving free money. However, it's not free. It's money for
They earned it.
prompt service.
That's right. To ensure promptness.
40% of people don't think food truck workers should ask for tips. Here we go.
Yeah. This is where it gets interesting.
Yes. 38% think tips should be solicited at fast food restaurants.
They should be solicited, so the iPad.
Yes. 40% of people believe that fast food restaurants should offer tip. I'm paying close to $11 for a value meal at McDonald's now.
Yeah.
Why am I giving more than that? It's killing me anyway.
I'm already paying for this in multiple ways.
Quality of service affects tips amount by the most 72%, followed by personal budget,
Yeah.
gauges tips 56% of consumers.
Okay. And one caveat I want to add here is the unexpected act of generosity should always be in the equation. So like,
Amen. Well said.
Especially for the follower of Jesus. Like, okay, I don't believe that your typical McDonald's run warrants, a tip for the drive-through worker or the cook or whatever.
Right.
However, I feel like generosity should always be an option of like, you know what, I'm gonna grace bomb. I'm gonna give this person a 20 just because or whatever. So just as we're working through this framework, that should be an option, but it's not the expectation, I think. Absolutely. Is a fair thing to say.
And for all intents and purposes of Simplexity, our podcast, the Jesus follower should be known by their generosity.
Yeah.
By their giving. I think it is the most visible, one of the most visible and tangible ways to show love is to unexpectedly bless people, and knowing that we are simply a manager, a steward of the resources given us by God, so as we are blessed to be a blessing. That shouldn't be just cliche.
Yeah.
I really believe that it blesses people to give with no strings attached generously, just to be a light to them. While at the same time, also it's on us to steward and be frugal to a degree, managing God's resources so as to allow for generosity, not just being guilted into giving because society says that's normative.
Yeah.
So
I would rather give a 20 to someone who's not expecting it in a
100%.
random act of generosity than just blowing, $1.50 at a pop every time I go to Starbucks because I felt compelled to give a 15% tip or whatever.
Great point.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is, just for our overall awareness, stats show that another reason people are tipping more is because of newer and cooler looking technologies. So all of those little iPads and kiosks, they all make their money.
Yeah. You know what? Speaking of the iPad, as if we haven't mentioned the iPads enough, but you mentioned the different options that they'll show. So they'll typically show like 3 options.
Yeah.
And I just find the psychology of this really interesting, where it's like you have the concept of the Overton window, where it's like you present an extreme option so that someone is more willing to accept a lesser extreme option. It's a negotiation tactic.
Yeah.
So like when you see that window, the 3 different options, it's like 40%, 30%,
Yes.
20%.
Yes.
It's like they originally wanted the 20%,
Right.
but when you see the 40, you're like, I guess I'll give 20.
Totally.
Because you're conceding not doing the extreme thing.
Yeah.
And you can see that it works because of the stats on the increased effectiveness of digital tipping.
To your point, it says kiosks and tablets with 3 large tipping suggestions that pop up on the screen in front of you. Business owners typically pick those options, and they can also disable the feature if they want, resulting in bigger tips.
Huh.
So as
Yep.
they gauge them.
Yeah.
So Asher said that for a long time in his place of work, they did not have that tablet tipping option. The minute they got it, he said, Dad, and I can attest, he brings home so much more money. Like, he is a major, major fan of it. The reason they withheld on doing it is because not so much that the owner of said business didn't care about his workers. He's a wonderful, wonderful employer. It was that he did not like the guilt aspect of that kiosk and the turnoff that it could cause his constant clientele. And so he went ahead and did it, and he actually did it because he got enough noise from his consumers that said, you need to put You need to put a tablet here. Why? Because though they had a jar up until so few people carry cash.
Yeah.
And so the
people are demanding to tip.
The people did.
That's how ingrained it is.
The people did.
Oh, my goodness. And one of the things I've seen before is like, we've talked about the standard like 15, 20, 25% in those options. When it's stuff that's like relatively less expensive, like let's say you're buying something for a couple bucks, right. I've seen them do like 50%, like in order to just get the dollar amount up. Yeah, because I mean, think about it. What 10% of $5 is what, 50 cents or something like that? Right. So it's like we got to bump up the numbers, people. We got to get a dollar tip on that $5 meal.
One of the things that I think could mitigate poor service with guilt tipping is if those little tabs spun around and said, hey, this is going to ask you a few questions. Well, the first question should be a little survey on how was the service. Mm-hmm. You give me that question first, then I'll go on to the second question, and that is, how much would you like to tip? Just so you understand when I do tip, what it's connected to. Yeah. But oh no. There's no surveys on there. I get the survey via email after the fact. Yeah. I'm tired of it, Boots.
I could see that being another. I'm just like so jaded that I'm seeing everything through this lens where it's like, did you have a great experience? Yeah. Would you like to tip then?
Yeah.
Because then to feel consistent, you're like, I guess I need to because I had a great experience.
Right.
That's like what apps do when they pull up that little notification like, are you enjoying the Bible app? Yes.
Do you want to
Do you want to rate us? Give us 5 stars? It's like, darn it.
Totally.
No
you
Bible
thought
app.
It would satisfy right there, but it doesn't.
You were always... Speaking of which, if you'd like to rate Simplexity, if you're enjoying this episode...
Hey, touche.
Yeah. Okay, so how can we've complained for a little bit. How can we...
What does this mean?
How can we weigh in and hopefully make this a little bit more...
Yeah,
helpful.
I simply got 3 points.
All right, let's do it.
3 points. That's it. The first is that I just want to give our listeners and viewers the license not to be guilted into tipping.
Yeah.
I have made it a decision within myself, and you got to make this preemptively. Otherwise, if you're in the moment, you're going to succumb to the peer pressure because all the kids are doing it. But you have got to predetermine, I'm not going to be guilt-tipped or guilted into. This is why I told Asher, every time I'm coming to you, to your store, please know, lest they run my name through the mud in the kitchen, I'm not tipping on that iPad. Yeah. But I'll slip you a 5 on my way out the door. Nice. But I'm not doing it because I feel like I'm getting scammed. Okay, so you got to predetermine that.
Yeah, but, and just to add on to that, don't do it on autopilot because that takes any degree of intentionality or generosity. Like be a cheerful giver.
Be a cheerful giver.
Be an intentional, decisive, cheerful giver where it's like, I'm making the decision right now to tip.
Amen.
Instead of just, beep. Okay, let me get out of here.
Totally.
The intentional act of tipping is far more meaningful, I think.
I couldn't agree more, which is point 2.
Oh.
Hey, don't be guilted into tipping. At the same time, be generous.
Yeah.
Be generous. Listen to the Holy Spirit stir you when you got butterflies in your stomach and a heart sort of, beating out of your chest where you feel like, hey, I really want to bless them and show them that I'm grateful for them, the service that they provided, or hey, I just want to brighten their day. Man, I just want to say that's good living.
Yeah.
That is good living. To be a conduit of goodness, generosity, and love. That's real deal Holyfield Christianity, I believe. Not just with those that you know, but those that you don't know. Why? Because most people, whether standing behind an iPad, serving your coffee, waiting your table, or what have you, are dealing with negative narratives in their mind. Mm-hmm. They've beat themselves down. They're in terrible environment circumstances. I would just say from my seat as a pastor and as a fellow human, it has been my experience as of recent. People are struggling a lot more than we even know. Mm-hmm. So just be a fingerprint of goodness. And many times that comes by way of blessing people financially. Be generous, but at the same time, don't be guilted.
Exactly. And to that point, it's far more potent generosity, I think, kind of what we were just saying. But if you just tip via the digital iPad thing, correct me if I'm wrong, I've never been in this situation, but I feel like, doesn't it just go to a large pool and then it kind of gets distributed out?
100%.
Like, there's a way, when you give for someone and you want to act spontaneously generous, like, they don't necessarily know that you're even doing that. So it kind of loses,
very impersonal.
It loses its power to really make someone's day if you don't know where this money came from. Oh, my cut's a little bit bigger today.
Right.
Cool. As opposed to, hey, I really want to bless you.
Amen.
So my dad, he models this kind of generosity.
He sure does.
Incredibly well.
I've been on the receiving end of it.
You're like, I got to hang out with him soon. One of the things that he does is he was like, there's a big difference between handing someone a $10 bill and, for whatever reason, handing them a $10 Amazon gift card.
Huh.
He was like, for whatever, I've tried this a few times. I've given people an Amazon gift card, and they're like, whoa, man, thanks.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Like, it's the same monetary amount of money, but it has an increased degree of intentionality.
Yes.
And like, oh, wow, you're giving me a gift.
I love that.
So, I don't know, just something to think through. Again, you lose that aspect when it's just pushing a button on a screen.
100%. Yep.
What's our last point?
Our last point is directed at those receiving the tips. And that is, if you are in the service industry, if you wait tables, if you are a barista, if you are a sandwich artist, serve and do with excellence that which your hand is doing. Do it with everything you got, because I believe it does not take much effort at all this day and age to shine outside the rest. I think if you are in the hospitality business, I love, you and I were talking about this over lunch, where I love to go into places, whether it be restaurants and or hotels or what have you, and just watch. There is a craft to hospitality. Mm-hmm. There is a craft to serving others. In the same way in ministry, there is a craft and a skill to making people feel comfortable and loved and cared for. Mm-hmm. It is terrible when somebody is placed in a position, seat, or office of where that craft is expected, and yet it is undermined and devalued by the one performing it. Serve well. Yeah. Don't feed into the cultural norm and the society, societal construct of I should just expect tips. Earn them. Yeah. Earn them. I think it just makes the world a better place. People should be generous, and people, whatever your hand finds to do, especially if you are a follower of Jesus, do it heartily as unto the Lord, not unto human masters, but do it so that you can show off your master. Yeah. This is why Jesus said, do good deeds so that people will see them and glorify your Father in heaven. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to speak to I get enough mean mugs and enough morning to think, let's up our game a little bit. No guilt, just charge.
Yeah.
I love you.
And Christians, let's do at least 20%.
Yes. Amen.
I've heard enough people on Instagram of, the church crowd, the after Sunday crowd.
Oh
they're
the worst.
Not looked forward to, from what I understand. And It's like, well, we should be the most, generous. Yeah. Generous, non-guilt tipping people.
Yeah. And if you're still dropping tracks or like,
here's $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like church business cards, like come sit with me. And yet, ever seen those church cards? Like, come sit with me, and yet you're leaving that in place of a tip. You should be ashamed of yourself. No Lighthousers do that.
That's right. That's right. Alrighty, sir. Well,
All right.
this has been a fun chat.
Sure.
I'm just glad that we're on the same page with this.
Amen. We're both angry.
We're both angry at the world. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And go ahead and follow us on Apple or Spotify or on Instagram at Simplexity Podcast.
Love you guys.
Oh, I